Yeah, also, I would ask if you are not muted to mute yourself. Um, I'll just be like lecturing and things. If you have any questions, like direct them towards the chat. Sadie probably just said that. Um, but okay, let's get started. I think unfortunately, if you don't have Unity installed at this point, I kind of have to assume that you do. There's a guide somewhere on the flyer if you need that. Um, But otherwise, I'm just gonna make a new project. So like, let's do that. If you've got Unity Hub, go into Unity Hub. Click New, 3D, make up a name or something. I'll actually be organized. Actually, Unity, week 3. How boring. I actually just recently moved my files too, so I need to. Oh, this is fine. Okay. This is going to take me a second, so like feel free to make a project for yourself. But I think I'm going to be talking for like a little bit before we like actually get started. Okay, how do I tackle this topic? I think it's easiest if I just wait for Unity to open, honestly. Unfortunately. So I hope you all are having a good day today. Roasted some broccoli in the oven. It was pretty tasty. I was very happy with myself. Combined with some like sausage and rice. Normally it doesn't take this long. It's just that I'm like recording and there's like chat going on at the same time. Okay, I guess at a high level, the stuff. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we were gonna be here like a little bit. Well, I'm glad your day's going well, Andy. My day is going great. I've had a very productive day today, actually. I'm feeling good. I also got like a full like night of sleep, which is unusual. Oh, we're getting there. So yeah, at a high level, there's a few. We're actually going to be covering like a few like very core Unity topics. One of them is something called the scene graph, which would be great because like basically any 3D program uses this methodology to organize things in your scene. We're going to talk about prefabs, which you may or may not have heard before. I'll get into that. And I think there was a third. Oh, and we're going to talk about like working with scripts and just like general workflow and like what to, if you like start programming or you start working with programmers in Unity, which is like very common at like game jams or like meetups or just if you're just like doing stuff on your own, like how you can create scripts that like are really nice or like friendly, and like how you can work with scripts in a way that makes like programmers' lives easier. So yeah, I'm gonna get started a little bit. So like as we remember from the first session, hopefully, there's like a scene view. There's like a hierarchy on the left side that shows you all of the things in your scene. Your default thing is always just like the camera and the light. You left click on stuff. You right click in the view to look around. You can hold right click and use WASD and Q and E to do things, or you can use middle click if you have a three button mouse. But okay, so I'm just gonna start adding some stuff. So I'm gonna right click in the hierarchy and make like a cube, right? We've been here before. We can like move this cube around, and we can like rotate it. If I use the rotate tool, I can like spin it around, this kind of stuff. This we're all pretty familiar with. And every object in the scene has like a position and a rotation and a scale. Like as it says here in the inspector, like you can see it says position, rotation, and scale. And every object, even the light, like which literally doesn't care about how big it is, like it doesn't matter what the scale is, but it just has a scale. So like everything in a Unity scene has a transform. The transform is the thing that has like the position, the rotation, and the scale. And this is really, really important because for reasons we're about to get into. So one of the things that we can do is we can create an empty. And this is kind of like a confusing like little thing that is present in a lot of 3D software, where you can just make an object that has nothing on it. Like if we look at this cube, it's got like, oh, like I'm gonna render a cube, it's got a collider on it that matches the cube. It's got some like materials and things that change its color and texture and things like that. But the empty has basically nothing. This is just a pure game object, and the only thing you get with a game object essentially is a transform, position, rotation, and scale. And the reason this is useful is because this is called a hierarchy, because there's like, well, let's just, I'm just going to show you. I'm going to take this cube. I'm actually going to put everything at 0, 0, 0 just to make this a little bit easier to understand for now. So I'm just going to like set its position to 0. I'm going to set its rotation to 0, so we just got like flat basic cube in the default like center of the scene. I'm going to do the same thing for my empty, so that the empty is just in the exact same position. Like if I click on these, you notice that the what's called the move tool gizmo doesn't move, because they're in the exact same position with the exact same rotation. But if I take this cube and I drag it onto the game object in the hierarchy, now you can see that there's like the cube like moved over a little bit, and like there's like this little triangle here that's like a drop down. If I show, like if I click on this, it like shows and hides the cube. And if I can just like keep doing this. Like I'm gonna make another cube. I'm gonna do the same thing. Well, actually, I'll leave it off to the side a little bit just because it'll make things clearer. I'm gonna add this to the game object too. So now, if I do this, if I hit this triangle, there's like 2 cubes inside this empty. This is what I'm referring to when I say like the scene graph. Like it's a very like technical term for what is essentially like a hierarchy of parent and children objects. So these 2 cubes, we would say, are children of this empty game object on the top. And the parent game object doesn't necessarily need to be an empty. Like I can take like a sphere and then move these cubes so that they're children of the sphere. And notice that like nothing changes about the scene, right? Like the cubes are still in the exact same position. The sphere hasn't moved. The game object, the empty game object, hasn't moved. Everything is the same. It's just that the relationships between these objects has now changed, where the sphere is the parent of these 2 cubes. And what this does, okay, hopefully I haven't lost anyone yet, but what this does is if I click on the sphere, you'll notice that like kind of everything in its like hierarchy gets highlighted. Like it's highlighted the cubes too, even though I just tried to click on the sphere. Even if I click on the sphere over here, the cubes are still highlighted. If I move the sphere around, it takes the cubes with it. Because of the hierarchy, like the cubes now like inherit. They are positioned relative to their parents. So like if we click into this cube, you can see that its position is like 0.3, 0.6, 0.9, whatever. This is like the difference, like this is the distance in like absolute terms. This is the distance between the cube and the sphere. If I were to take the cube and move it onto the game object, watch the transform on the right side. The numbers will just magically change, because now the transform that's there represents the difference between this and the empty game object that's like chilling over here. So just to recap, like this is like there are parent objects and there are children objects, and the children objects like inherit the position, like the transform of the parent. And this is like really complicated. I don't know like how better to explain this, so I'm just gonna like kind of keep playing around with this so we can get a feel for like what's going on. Like if I take this sphere, I'm just gonna delete the empty because I think it's a little bit too confusing actually to have something that's not there. And maybe I'll make these smaller so we can understand, or just to conceptualize a little bit better, like, oh, these are like children things. So I'm gonna switch to the scale tool, make these a little bit smaller. So in our hierarchy, we've got this parent sphere, we've got these 2 cubes, and again, like if I move these things around, if I move the sphere around, the cubes go with it. And this actually even works with rotation. If I rotate the sphere, like the local, there's like terms for this, like local and world space, but the relationship between the children cubes and the sphere stays the same no matter what. So if I like rotate this, you can kind of imagine like everything inside the sphere world is just like moving around, and everything inside the sphere world is staying the same, but like the sphere world exists in like the greater scene world, which, and from this perspective, like everything is changing, right? Because I'm like spinning the whole sphere world around. And this works too for like scaling, and this is where stuff gets really strange looking and kind of conceptually crazy. If I scale the sphere, this whole sphere world like gets scaled too. So like even these cubes get like crazy stretched out and like moved around and stuff. But if I click into the cubes, you'll notice that like I made them smaller. But you'll notice that like all of the X, Y, and Z scale are the same because they haven't changed. Like the underlying cube like position, rotation, and scale values haven't changed, even though I've taken the sphere and I've like spun it around and I've like scaled it and I moved it around. The cubes, the relationship between the cubes and its parents are still intact. This is important for like a lot of reasons. The main one being that people, especially when you open other people's projects, they will be organized this way. Like a lot of times people will like make something that's like, okay, I'm gonna put all of my like terrain or something in an empty game object, and then like put it in there so that whenever I want to move the terrain around or I want to spawn the terrain or something, I can like move them all at once. This is just a way that people like very commonly organize their projects. But this is also important for something that we're going to talk about later, where you can like imagine making like very or just like complex or nuanced movements by taking advantage of how this behaves. So like for example, in this GIF that I had posted here, like you can see that the camera kind of like is moving around a center object. And I'm going to be trying to reiterate this as many times as I can because I know this is like really conceptually nuts. But if you imagine this cube to be a camera and you imagine the sphere to be the center of rotation, if I spin this around, this is kind of like spinning the camera around a center object, right? So like if you want things to move around in a circle, like one simple and easy way to do it would be like I'm going to make a cube and I'm like, hey, I want this to move in a circle. I can make an empty object that, and I can make the cube a child of the empty object, and then I can take the parent and spin it around in a circle, and you can see that the cube starts moving around in a pretty wide arc. It's jumping around because I have like crazy monitor setups, but it's moving smoothly, I promise. Okay, yes, I feel like I have to pause and like. Let's like go into Unity, I guess, and just try to play with this. Like maybe set up a couple like a couple objects and just try dragging them onto each other and getting a feel for like when you move the parents, what happens. When you rotate the parents, what happens. And if you're new again, so this is my invitation to like go try this now. And also like please ask questions if you're lost or if you don't understand. But if you're new, like right click, you can right click in the hierarchy on the left. And then go down to 3D object and start making some objects that way. I'm just going to make a bunch of them, cube, capsule, sphere, why not. And I'm going to move them around so I can like actually see them. And you can try to play, I challenge you to try to play with empties. It's a little bit harder to work with conceptually because you can't see them in the scene. But they are very like strong tools that you can use when you're laying stuff out in Unity generally, because you can't see them. There are ways to like organize your objects without having to put an object in the scene, which a lot of times you don't want to clutter your visual space, you know. So I've made a bunch of stuff in my scene. I'm gonna like parent everything to this capsule, or child everything to this capsule. Maybe this one too. I'm going to delete this empty because I don't like empties right now. Just not feeling them. And I'm going to like spin this around. Oh, crazy. Oh, crazy. I actually didn't know this about. There's like a center of rotation. Yeah, if I use the gizmo, it uses a center of rotation. This is news to me. If I... This is news to me. If I use the center, if I like click on the capsule and like use the rotate tool and the scale tool, it seems to like average out the position and create some like mystical center position out of all the objects that are there. But if I use this thing over here, like the direct numbers, I can like move using the capsule as the center of rotation, which is what you want to do a lot of the time. So definitely keep that in mind. Like, let me think of like a good. Okay, here's a great like thing that we're gonna start with. Actually, I'm gonna delete everything in the scene. I'm gonna try to make a like solar system thing out of cubes, actually, because why not? That's just more fun. Let's spin this around a little bit. I'm gonna make another cube. I'm gonna move it way off to the side here. I'm gonna make it a child of this cube. I'm gonna make another cube. I'm gonna make this one a lot smaller, but I'm gonna make this one a child of this cube over here. So I'm just gonna make this like easy one planet solar system where this is the sun, this is the planet, and this is its moon. And if we like go in and not using the gizmos because they tend to be a little bit weird, as we just discovered, and I use this rotation thing, if I click on the letter Y, I actually get like a slider thing, but you can also type in values. But if I click on Y and I hold, then I can like, you know, see, I can fake this orbit this way, and then I can click into the child cube, this one. Maybe I should name these to be nice. Sun, sure. I don't want to call it Earth. I'll just call it Mars, sure. Does Mars even have a moon? I don't think it does, actually. And you can see if I go in here and I play with this, well, first I have to set this to 0. Rotations are crazy. Like, that's like this is a math class on its own, rotations. But if you want things to behave predictably, just set all your rotations to 0, and then you can mess with one axis at a time and understand what's going on. But if I go and play with this Y rotation, you see I can like spin the moon around the cube, and it's great. Actually, one thing I kind of want to do is I don't want when I spin the Mars object, I kind of want the moon to spin without the like the actual planet spinning, you know, because that's not really how it works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an empty here. And I'm going to copy the position of the Mars object. I can do this by like literally like writing down all of these values, which I highly do not recommend you do because it's so arduous. But I can just right click it and then hit copy component on the word transform here, and then I'll go back to the empty that I've created, and I'll right click in the same spot on the transform, and I'll hit paste component values. And now you can see like if I click between these two, the gizmos don't really change very much. And now if I parent this to this, I don't know, I'll just rename this like hidden Mars parent. Now if I spin this around, I get the behavior that I wanted earlier, where you know, the moon thing spins around the Mars object without the Mars object moving. And if I wanted to move this independently, I could, right? So now I've got these like 3 different points of articulation where like I can spin the sun around. I could do this for the sun too, actually. That would be a smart thing to do. I can spin the sun around. I can spin this around independently, and I can take the hidden Mars pin and I can spin this around. Okay. All right, this is a lot. This is like, oh, this is a lot. I hope everyone's following because this part's super hard. Seems like no one's complaining in chat though, so I think I'm just going to keep going a little bit. So the next thing I'm going to talk about, just so that we can like start working with this, like, you know, this is all for a point, is I'm going to, I think I mentioned this earlier, but there's a Unity package here that I created that will help us kind of like experiment with this a lot more. I understand it conceptually, but not as fast as you, and making it happen, that's all right. I'm a dork. I've been working with this tool for like 5 years. I wouldn't expect anyone to be like quick with the buttons. Okay, so I'm gonna download this Unity package. I'll paste this link in the chat again, and then probably just, well, yeah, I'll download this Unity package. Once you have it downloaded, it's pretty simple to import. You just take it and you, I hope there's nothing behind here. That's fine. Just take it and you drag it onto your project. It'll give you this dialog. Do you want all this stuff? You just say yes, I do. I want it all. And these scripts are going to be like super useful, so like hold on to them. If you plan on using Unity again, trust me, you're gonna like these. I'll give you guys a second to get that going. Take a sip of water. So this is like, again, like a non-coding Unity class. I think I set out to do that from the very beginning. But one thing that's like very, very common, and it's kind of like Unity is totally built around this, and we'll see this in a second, is that there are different avenues for different kinds of people to like plug into the project. So like asset creators will have their own pipeline for like exporting models, and then people can import them. And then programmers will have their pipeline for like taking their scripts and updating them and putting them in the scene. And then designers, which is what we are and what we're doing right now, have a way of modifying the scenes, like taking the scripts and taking the models and putting everything together, right? So understanding like how you can interface with models, like we've done model imports as like very simple. You know, like actually I'm gonna go get the pig model as well because it's really just my favorite. We've talked about this before, but it's very easy to just take assets and drag them into your scene, and even Unity manages its own copies of all the assets, so it's like very much, you don't have to think very hard about it. So we've gone over like importing assets, which you know, manages that one side of the relationship where it's like you and the model, or you, the designer, and the model creators, which could also be you. Programmers could also be you, you know, it doesn't. But now we're going to talk about like ingesting scripts. So we've gotten these scripts. If you have a programmer, maybe they already exist in your project, but it's also pretty common to just like go into the asset store and grab some. You don't have to read these, like literally don't worry about it, though they would be nice. If you are trying to learn to program in Unity, these are not bad places to start. But okay, so I'm going to talk about first the simple movement script. This is like bread and butter. Yeah, sure. Okay, so I downloaded the Unity package. I did this from my browser because I'm lazy, but I'll open up my file explorer anyway. So I've got the Unity package file here, and I just took it and I dragged it into the assets folder, or into the project window in the bottom left. Like you can't drag it anywhere else. You can see it turns into like a little circle, XE, do not do this sign. But if I put it here, then it's like, okay, cool. Well, I already imported it, so it's telling me I have nothing to import. But for you, it'll say like, here are all the things that you can import. And in the bottom right, you just click import. Another way to do this would be like assets, import package, custom package. But like, for the most part, you can just take anything and drag and drop it into the project folder. It's just the easiest way to, because otherwise you'll be like trying to figure out how to import assets this way, and it's like kind of kooky. You can do a lot of importing just by dragging and dropping into the window. Okay, yeah, so once you got that, yeah, I wanted to talk about the simple movement script. So the way you add any script to an object, like we've talked about this before with like rigid bodies. When we wanted to make things physics objects, we would like go in and click add component and type in rigid bodies. We can do that here too. Like we can go in here and type in simple movement and then click that. That's fine. I'm gonna remove that. You can also, if I click on the sun again and I drag in I can drag and drop scripts directly into the inspector. So I'm like, oh, I want this simple movement script in my sun object, and now I've got it. So there's two ways to do that. You can do add component, type in simple movement, and what this script does, unfortunately I didn't have enough time to document this, but what this script does is it essentially lets you move things like without having physics on them, which is really nice because you have a lot of control. That means you have like a lot of control. So this thing we were doing earlier where I took the sun and like spun it around one axis, this script is going to let us do that like programmatically. So I'm just going to go into the simple movement script. You can see that there's like a bunch of different parameters like rotate X, rotate Y, rotate Z, move X, move Y, and move Z. I'm just going to take rotate Y and I'm going to type in like 100. 1090 sounds way too fast. It doesn't do anything immediately because you know that's how scripts do. But if I hit play, then it'll start like running the project. Like everything will start going, including the script. So if we look at our scene now, we've got the sun spinning around. It's great. Like look at this cute little animation. So it's so easy. We drag a script on there, we put a number in, and now our sun is spinning around. So whatever you guys have been building, I suggest that you just try playing with even just the simple movement script. I think for now I'm gonna get my like my quote-unquote solar system to like operate in a way that like I want. I'm gonna take like So like, yeah, go ahead and go nuts. I'm gonna give you like maybe 5-10 minutes while I do this for myself too. I'm gonna take the Mars object. I'm just gonna be doing everything here, so if you get lost, you can look at my screen. I'm gonna take the Mars object and I'm gonna drag the symbol movement script on there again. I'm still working with the y-axis rotation. I'm gonna go in and test that to be sure. Yep, looks fine. 100 is, I don't want to use the same numbers over and over again because I'm an artist. So I'll use negative 654, sure, why not? And I'll give it a little bit of a Z rotation just because, again, I'm an artist. 20, why not? So that's Mars, and I also want this moon to spin around a little bit too. So I'm going to, well, this time I'll just type it in because why not? Simple movement. And I'm going to set up rotate Y. I want this one to go a lot slower, I think. Yeah, let's type in like 10. Let's see how that feels. And then a little bit of an X rotation, like 2 or something. All right, so I've got, and the moon itself, yeah, I want this to spin too. I'm having fun now. All right, let's just make it spin like kind of fast, but not too fast. Is there a way to edit the parent object without affecting the children object? No, there is. Actually, there is, but I just don't usually do it because it can lock your. I don't know where the button is like off the top of my head, and if I turn it on, that I don't know how to find it again. But one thing you can do is like, okay, say I want. This is a great question, by the way. Say I want to. I don't know, like move the Mars, how do I want to do this? Okay, I want to move the sun without moving the Mars, any of these things, right? So one thing I can do is I can just take all the children and move them out of the hierarchy, and then like move the thing that I wanted to move, and then reparent them. So you'll notice that like everything that I removed from the parent like stopped moving because they weren't. So that's like an easy workaround, and usually changing parents isn't super slow, so this will like be a very scalable solution. And to multi-select, I use like the shift key. Like if I wanted to select everything in here, I can hold shift and click things. You can also hold control to multi-select that way. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so I've gone in and I've added simple movements to all of these. I just wanted to get them to rotate in a nice way. So hopefully now when I hit play, oh, look at my cute little solar system of cubes. All these cube people. Look at the nice little rotation here too. Oh, so good. And even actually one thing I kind of want to do is, this is the last thing I do before I move on, I swear. I'm just having too much fun. I want the camera to spin around the scene too, so I'm going to do this thing that I was talking about earlier where I create an empty. And the thing that I'm trying to be really, really cognizant of when I'm using empties is the relationship between the two parents or the two objects that I'm parenting to each other. So like I kind of want I kind of want them to be aligned in this, like it says over here, this is the z-axis. I want the camera and the empty to be aligned in the z-axis. So I'm going to try to do that from above. And I also want them to be aligned in the y-axis, like up and down. So I'm going to do that from the side, and it seems like that's okay. So now that I'm comfortable with kind of where the camera is positioned, I'm going to take my empty, and I'm just going to rename this so it can stay organized. Camera rotation parent, because that's what I'm going to do with it. Take the camera, and I'm going to make it a child of the camera rotation parent. I'm going to do the same thing that I've been doing. Take this, add a simple movement script. I want it to go pretty slow. I don't want to make myself nauseous looking at this. I'm going to go 30, and then like 2. How about that? And for fun, I'm going to change this to, I'm going to click on the camera, change the clear flag to solid color, and make the background black so it can feel like we're in space. I'm tired of staring at this skybox already. Yes. Now we're in space. Alright, cool. Okay, cool. So I think the thing, this is like again, this is a lot of content. The thing that we just learned is sort of how to like expect scripts to work in Unity. This is a very, very common pattern where someone will make a script and there will be a bunch of variables on it, and you can like change them. In this case, I gave you like rotate X, rotate Y, rotate Z. There's move X, move Y, move Z. And kind of last week we were playing with some random prefabs that had things like movement speed and jump height and like hunger values or whatever. But so if you're thinking about programming for yourself in Unity, you should try to do things this way, because then like if every time I wanted to change the speed of these things, I had to like open up the script, this would be a miserable workflow, right? I would have to go in and like, okay, change the numbers and then check it, like recompile everything. And it's like, just, try to make life easier for yourself by either saying, hey, programmer, talking to yourself or the other person, like, can you like give me a nice little public variable to mess with so that I can design this nicely. So cool, nice. We did that with nice and simple numbers. So let's try to do it with something a little bit more complicated, I guess. Yeah, please. Yeah, so the way I've set up my scene is that, let's dig into this a little bit. If I click on Mars, you can see that the Mars cube is just like this cube, right? And there's also this other object called hidden Mars parent, and then there's the moon object. And if I look at the, I really wish, there we go. Okay, here's what I just did. There's an option here that kind of changes where the tool center is, and you want it to say pivot, not center. Just make sure this says pivot, because this is like the best way to deal with this. But if I click on hidden Mars parent and this thing says pivot up here, you can see that the hidden Mars parent is like, there's no renderer on it. It's like an empty object that has nothing, but it's chilling in like the exact same position that the Mars object is, right? Like all these numbers are exactly the same, except this one is spinning a little bit. And it's like visually the gizmo is not moving when I click on it and compare it to the Mars tool. And this is the thing that I'm rotating. So like if I move this around, you can see that the moon is attached to it because it's childed to the hidden Mars parent. I'm gonna hit Control Z. And if I spin this around in here, you can see that it's like definitely attached to it. So this is why I can get the Mars object and the moon to like spin around each other independently. As you can tell. But this is not true for the relationship of the sun object and the Mars object, because there's no like secondary hidden parent there. When the sun spins, I can show this by just like spinning it around. If I click on the sun and I spin this around, you can see everything underneath it spins around also. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question. This is a good time to ask questions actually, like right now, like if you have any. Sure. I won't dig into this too much. I mean, when it comes to scripts, that these are kind of like whatever the programmer decides they are. In this case, these are in the rotate values are in degrees per second. So this means that every second it'll rotate. This number up here, rotation Y, will go up by 10 degrees every second, is what this means. And that's the same for the move XYZ. This is in units or meters per second, depending on how you want to think about it. If I typed in 1 here, then this X value up here would change by 1 unit every second. Okay, so now's the time. If you've got any questions, speak up. We're about to layer on some like, I'm hitting you with like all of the Unity concepts right now, and I apologize, but yeah. Yes. No. Yeah, if I click on the moon, the way you can think about these scripts, or the simple movement script, is that it changes the transform of the object it's attached to. So if I add something to the moon, and I can test this by like going up to the transform and spinning it around, you can see that it like spins around on its own axis and like doesn't move too much. But if I click on the parent and do the same thing, then that's what like makes the whole thing like spin around. Um, so yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of like, this is why I like demonstrating this more with objects, because it's easier to conceptualize. It's like, oh, like I've attached the Mars object to the Sun object, and now they're like kind of like welded together invisibly, so that when I spin around the Sun object, like everything spins around and stuff. And this is kind of like how you got to think about it. And again, like this, I don't even, here it's called a hierarchy. In Unreal, it's probably called something totally different. In Blender, who knows what to call it? I think it's just like parent-children. Scene graph is like the mathematical term for it. A lot of times you can like just find it that way. But basically and a lot of 2D game software is like this too, where there are parents and children, and the children inherit the transforms of the parents. This is like very common structure, like a common structure of like game engines in general. And like this, I mean, this kind of like kooky solar system application is like a clear, easy way to leverage this functionality, but there are this is kind of how you can think a lot about like positioning and moving things around your scene. Especially like with camera movement, this is like a really handy way to deal with things. Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Here we go. So I guess one thing we can do real quickly, just I feel like I've boxed myself into this solar system concept. So I want to make it so that there's like little things in the way that these can knock away. So I'm just gonna like take these cubes. Let me see if I can test that these two things will actually collide. Sure. Alright, that looks like it's in the path, yeah. Yeah, and I'm going to take this cube, this new cube that I've built, I'm going to double click it on the left side so I can get a cleaner shot at it. And I'm going to make it a rigid body, so now it's like physics enabled like we've talked about before. And I'm going to disable use gravity, so now it's at 0G. And now that this thing has physics, when I hit play, I mean, this is just going to be fun, right? Like, oh yeah, it just gets knocked away. It's actually kind of confusing now that the camera is spinning around, because it's kind of like, whoa, what's going on with this thing? Maybe it makes it feel more like space. I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure yet. All right, well, we'll keep it. Okay, and now that like I've got this like thing that's like, where is it? Oh, it's this one. Maybe I should start changing the colors of these actually. I'm gonna make a material, if we remember this from, I actually think we did this last time and not in the first session. If I right click in the project and I go up to create and then click on material, I'm just gonna say like asteroid. Sure, that's what this is, an asteroid. And I'm going to click on my cube, which I will also rename to asteroid, and I'm going to take my material and add it to, actually I need to open this up first, look at the current list of materials and add it there. Boom! Alright, now it's got the asteroid. Nothing has changed yet because the asteroid material is still white, but I'm going to make it like, I don't know, why, I want to have fun, I don't want to do brown, it's so boring, right? Gray, boo, who cares? I want some pink, like lavender. What's the word? Periwinkle. Let's go for that. There it is. Just honestly, this is just for my own sanity, so I can identify the asteroid from anything else. Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right, we're gonna talk about like a few concepts here, but the first thing I'll do is I'm gonna take the camera rotation. Like I said before, I thought it was like kind of confusing when these things collided. Actually, I'm going to move this a little bit further away. When these things collided, it's like the camera rotation is like a little confusing to think about. So I'm going to go back to the camera rotation parent, which has the movement script on it, and I'm going to disable it. So now when I hit play, like the camera's not going to move. Oh, nice! I'm glad that still got struck. This actually makes this whole thing make way more sense. But this is still kind of boring. So like I do want camera movement eventually. I just don't want it immediately so that I'm not confused by like the asteroid movement. So this is what we're gonna do when we talk about our next script. This one's called Simple Timer. To stay organized, I'm going to make a game object. This is another very, very common pattern in Unity, where I'll call this like scene controller or something. Sometimes they're called game controllers, sometimes they're called singletons, sometimes they're whatever. Basically, all this is an empty game object where we don't care where it is. We're just going to put scripts on it that control things, other things in the scene. Because in this case, this timer doesn't make sense to put anywhere else, really. Like, this isn't going to be owned by an object. But I made this empty scene controller object. I don't care where it is in the scene. I'm going to take the simple timer, I'm going to add it. And you can see that this is like super kooky. Like before we have these like numbers that we can change. We've got like time, but then we have this checkbox, which it's labeled repeat forever, which I can kind of imagine what that means. Like, oh, if I click this, probably it'll repeat something forever. And repeat n times, which is a little bit of a programmer speak, but n just stands for like number or like whatever, and we can safely assume that the number in here means like repeat that n times. But then we have this like crazy, I don't even know what this is, timed, reached, boolean, what, list is empty, what? This is like, okay, this is like the next like crazy thing I'm gonna drop on you guys. These are called like Unity events. A lot of scripts will give you this, and it's kind of like it's a pretty relatively new feature in Unity, but this like elevates like the potential for design by a trillion, because you can do stuff like what I'm about to do. So what you can do here is like this is like an event. If you see this like box with like list is empty and there's like plus minus, this is an event. Something in this script is going to trigger this event, and it's going to happen. Right now this list is empty, so nothing is going to happen, but if we hit the plus here, we can like make a new thing, and it's still kind of like there's a bunch of options here that we don't quite understand yet. And if I keep clicking the plus button, you can see that I can add like as many things to this event as I want. And if we just like, use our power of inference, we can figure out that like, oh, it's a timer, there's a time, I can repeat it if I want, I can repeat it a certain number of times that I want, so it'll probably trigger this event when this time runs out, right? So I'm going to set this to like 3 seconds. I'm going to say, in 3 seconds, I want something to happen, or I'm going to tell this script that. And I'm going to make a new event. Okay, now we get to talk about this. So if I click on this button, just kind of ignore it. There's like, you can turn it off, which I don't know why you would want that, but that's one way to just like, you can turn it off if you want. Editor and runtime, this is tricky. Like some scripts can run like while the project is not even running, but I really, really recommend you do not mess with that, because you can get into very bad situations if you let this happen. So you only want to look at off and runtime only. We'll just leave it at runtime only for now. There's this like none parentheses object, and this is kind of like where stuff starts getting crazy. So what I'm thinking is I want the rotation of the camera to like start up in like after 3 seconds. So I'm gonna go to the object that has the simple movement script on it, and you'll notice that if I click on it, it changes the inspector, so I have to be kind of careful here. I'm gonna click on the scene controller, and I'm going to, without letting go of the mouse, I'm going to drag the camera rotation parent over to this thing that says none object. Right, I'm just going to do that again because it's like crazy. Like, you can't just left click on this because it'll change what's in the inspector, right? So I'm going to click on the scene controller, and I'm going to drag the camera rotation parent over to the object, quote unquote parameter, over to this thing over here. So now the event is going to do something with the camera rotation parent. And what these events let you do is they let you like change things on the object that you've put on here. And in this case, what we want to do is we want to enable the simple movement script. So I'm going to go down to simple movement, and you can play with these if you want. They're a little, like, they give you kind of everything and nothing at the same time. But in this case, if we go down to static parameters and click on bool enabled, then this will let us like set whether or not this is enabled within the event. So I'm going to check this box, and now what we have is a script where after 3 seconds, it'll run this event, and this event goes over to the camera rotation parent, it finds the simple movement script, which I found in here. It takes the enabled parameter and it turns it on. So if we look at the camera rotation parent again, just one more time, like it's got the simple movement script, but this is the enabled parameter that prevented it from moving earlier, right? I unchecked this because I didn't want the script to run. But when this event triggers and runs, then it's going to re-enable that simple movement script, and then it's going to start moving. So if I hit play, hopefully I will be validated here. 1, 2, 3. Now the camera's moving. You can see that this thing is starting to look like it's moving in some crazy ways or whatever. And we've got like all of this stuff going down, right? Okay, so this is like a huge, massive jump in like functionality, right? Like before, like last session and the session before, we could kind of only play with like the things that we already had. Mine didn't have a checkbox, yes. So I will try like just to not explain this too much because it can get very confusing and you don't really care. If you click on this and you go to simple movement, there's two sets. There's like the dynamic up here and there's the static down here. You have to choose the static ones. And you can kind of just remember this. It's like, oh, there's no checkbox. I must have chosen the wrong one. I'm going to go back and choose the other one. Now I've got a checkbox. Yeah. And it's in, yeah. So, yeah. And if you dig into this kind of functionality further and you're willing to do like a little bit of scripting, like, or you can just like email me and I can like run you through it. But you can do like other even like more intense things like change, like with a small amount of scripting, you can do more intense things like change these values or, you know, move them up and down and things. This is just kind of, these scripts are just like easy gateways into like making your scene like really dynamic without having to think too hard about like, oh, well, I need to animate this and that. It's like, well, you know, I just want the camera to spin after 3 seconds. So, you know, I set up the camera to spin, I set up this thing that'll enable the spin after 3 seconds, and voila, the camera spins after 3 seconds. So, I mean, yeah, like, okay, let's add some more things. Like maybe I want some like shooting stars, right? I'm gonna take a cube. Everything in my scene is a cube today. I'm not exactly sure why. And I'm going to kind of position it a little bit off screen. If I click on the camera, I can kind of see whether or not it is actually off screen. It looks like it is. Just to be safe, I'm gonna like move it up this way. I want this to like shoot across the scene. So I'm going to take a simple movement script and I'm going to add it. I'm going to set the movement. Let's actually test which axes I want it to move on. So I want it to move this way, which I think is, if I look at the changing positions, it's like X is going lower and Y is also going lower. So I probably want like negative, I don't know how many units per second, let's say like 10, and negative 5, I guess. This is going to be, I think this is going to be kind of fast moving, but let's see what this looks like. Oh yeah, shooting star, make a wish. Yeah, but I want this to like happen later a little bit. So right now there's like a lot of action in the scene. Maybe I want this to happen in like a few seconds. So I'm gonna go over to my scene controller. I'm gonna make another simple timer, and this one is gonna control the asteroid movement. So again, I'm gonna take my asteroid and I'm going to drag it into, oh whoops, I forgot one very important part. Whoops, Control Z, please forget what I just did, please. Okay, I'm gonna go over here to my scene controller. I'm gonna have this other simple timer added. I'm going to add something to the event so that there's another event, or there's another like thing trigger in there. And I'm going to drag in the asteroid into the object. I'm gonna go over to the, did I do, oh, I accidentally deleted the movement script. Oh no, that's so frustrating. Technical difficulties, please ignore. Negative 10. Just pretend this isn't happening because I already explained this. I'm just going to re-add this because I accidentally Control Z'd one times too many. And I'm actually going to disable this too while I'm here because I don't want it to move yet. I want it to move after a little time. So we've got the asteroid. Now we've got simple movement. We're going to go down to enabled. We're going to enable it. So now, right now, it's like every 1 second. It like does this. I want to wait like even a little bit longer. Maybe not as far as 3 seconds, but maybe like 2.5 or something. All right, let's see what that looks like. Oh. That was so fast. Why did it do that? Did I do this right? 1001, 1002. What? Wait, let's look at the let's look at this thing. Oh! That's actually really crazy. This is the wrong. Wait. Yes. I was messing with the wrong object. This is why, like, I was trying to stay so nice and organized before. Okay, I'm gonna call this the shooting star. Shooting star. Let's try this again. I'm going to remove this because the reason this wasn't here is because this was the wrong object. I was just straight up looking at the wrong one. Okay, shooting star. It's got the simple movement script. It's got this whole thing. I'm going to disable it so it doesn't run. I'm going to go in here. Now it says missing object. Put the shooting star in here. Go over to simple movement, enabled, and make sure it gets enabled. We're going to wait 2.5 seconds. Perfect. Okay. Everything looks good. The simple movement script is here. It's set. It's not enabled by default, but then 2.5 seconds in, it should be enabled. Boom. Wow, what a dynamic and amazing scene we've got. Crazy. Okay, so hopefully, we're like a little bit more comfortable with this event thing. I know this one is like nuts, because like we went from just like, oh, okay, we've got these, you know, simple things. I can change numbers and move things around. So like all of a sudden this menu is like, it's a whole own world. So like, you know, if we have any problems, but I think, well, I mean, I'm kind of like running out of creative ways to use this. Maybe there's like, I don't know. Maybe I can like, oh, I can do one of the things, actually, I can do one of the things that I did in the GIF. I'm going to make a text mesh pro object. And if you don't remember this from last time, if you like go into, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to add some text into the screen. And the best way to do this is by making a text mesh pro object. You right click in your hierarchy, you go to 3D object, you click text mesh pro. But when you do that, there's like a whole import dialog that shows up and you just got to click through it. Be like, yeah, like give me the text mesh pro essentials. It'll ask you to like install some other stuff too, but you can just kind of forget about it. You only need the basics. I'm gonna put this text thing somewhere that like looks nice, maybe up here. I'm gonna click on the camera to like kind of preview. Actually, if I move this game window over to the side here, then I'll be able to preview it a little bit better. I did that again by, like, there's the game tab up here. You can pick it up and you can drag it. You can pop it out if you want, if you have multiple monitors, but I'm just going to keep it inside here to stay organized. This text is kind of a little bit big. Yeah, please, you know, email me. I think my email's on the flyer, but I'll type it in the chat. me@aaron.work. Or if you're one of the ITP people, of course, ping me on Slack whenever you want. Glad to help. There's also a Unity channel. I know there's a couple pretty experienced people hanging out in there, so if I'm not immediately available, maybe someone else will be if you ping that. But I'm happy to answer any questions either way. So thanks for coming. So I'm just gonna reorganize this a little bit so it like kind of looks nice. Maybe I'll rotate this a bit just because it's like, oh yes, artistic. Yes, there we go. And what I want is I want this to say like, make a wish. Make a wish. Ooh, it's not big enough. Maybe I'll just make the font size a little bit smaller. You can see that this Text Mesh Pro thing is a little finicky. There's like a box. If you've ever used like PowerPoint or something, it's like you always have these problems where there's like the virtual box that you need to fit the text in, and you have to like fiddle with all the sizes and things, and it's all the same. These problems never escape you. But I want to do the same thing as before, where like when the shooting star comes up, I want to show this text, and then when the shooting star goes away, I want to not show the text. So if I go over to the scene controller, this part over here, the second simple timer that I had set up to control the movement of the box, going to add another thing to my event. So right now it enables simple movement on the shooting star, but I'm also going to take it and make it enable my text. So I'm going to drag the text over here like I did before. And this time I'm going to, instead of doing simple movement enabled, I'm going to go down to like Text Mesh Pro, and there's like a lot of stuff that we can hear, but I'm just going to go down to static again and go to enabled, and I'm going to enable it. So now in 2.5 seconds it'll start the movement of the shooting star, and it'll also like enable this text. So I'm going to go over to the text, and I'm going to disable the Text Mesh Pro script. Now you can see the text disappears. But if I hit play and wait 2.5 seconds, bingo, bango, bongo. Oh, it moved! Oh, because the camera's moving too. That's funny. This scene is getting more and more cluttered. I think I'm doing a very bad job of designing, but I am not going to. I'm not going to refine this product. I don't think I'm going to be selling it anytime soon, or even putting it on my portfolio, hopefully. But one last thing that I want to do with this is I want to take. I want to add a third timer, or actually, you know, I can cheat a little bit. This timer is on 3 seconds, and this timer is on 2.5 seconds. So maybe I can just add it to this one. I'm gonna add another trigger to this event. I'm gonna drag in my text object. I'm gonna go down to Text Mesh Pro, go down to enabled under static parameters. And I'm gonna disable it. So now the text should only show on the screen for like 2.5 seconds. It shouldn't even be there that long. Make a wish. Oh, so fast. Well, you know, we'll just have to live with it. That's how it goes. I mean, maybe I can play with this number too, just because it's so bad. I need to do something about it. I'm going to make that 6. La la la. Make a wish. Goes away. Camera starts spinning. Cool. Nice. So, okay, let me look back at the GIF. Also, now that I'm gonna like stop for a second and just kind of like wax poetic about this kind of stuff. So if you have any questions, feel free to cut in. I'm gonna go into the GIF that I had and just gonna talk about this a little bit. Actually, I can even open the project just while I'm talking about it, so I can show you guys what's going on. Let's see. It's in Dropbox. It's under. Maybe I should do this off screen. Work current Unity tutorial week 3 test. Open that. Yes, please. Hopefully that doesn't take too long. So we talked a little bit about spinning the camera, so we can kind of see here like the camera spins for a little while. We talked about stopping the camera. Or in the case of the project we were just looking at, we started the camera after a little bit of time, but here we stopped the camera after a little bit of time. We also had this text come up. I was like, oh no, like there's a thing about to come in and hit me. Oh no! And we've also played around with these like kind of physicsy things where we have something that is moving consistently, and then we have an object that has physics enabled, and it kind of gets bowled over by something. So we have the tools to do like. Pretty complex things with like, okay, cool, like we've got a pig, you know, we want him to get hit by a thing, we kind of want this cinematic thing to happen where the camera comes in and, you know, looks at him, and then you can see the ball coming, and it's like this moment of the audience going like, oh no, then the screen says oh no also, like, cool, nice. There are a few more things that we can do with these scripts. Wait, what else did I make? Simple collision and simple spawner. That I could talk about, but I'm just trying to give you guys some breathing room, so like, you know, play around with it in your own scene for a little bit, like ask me some questions if something doesn't work. I've been trying to come up with like different ideas for just to inspire you guys, so like the more that you play around with this stuff, the more that it'll make sense, right? Especially these like crazy parenting relationship things. It's like so crazy to wrap your head around that, like this is how you can maneuver objects around your scene. There was a Blender session the other day where someone was doing this too, where it's like the object, like instead of having an object in the center that was spinning around, there was an object that didn't move at all and the camera moved around it, which made it easier to deal with lighting and stuff and organize your scene. But from the perspective of the actual experience, it's like, oh, well, the stuff in the center is spinning around, obviously, but then you look at the scene and it's like, whoa, what is this crazy movement? What's going on? So, yeah, that's that. Alright, so I'm going to talk about the last two scripts that are in here. We're going to start with simple collision, actually, because this one is just going to be a little bit easier to talk about. So I'm going to, what I'm going to do is I want to make it so that there's another asteroid that comes down and it hits the sun and then disappears. This is going to be like pretty janky basic version of this. Maybe if I have time later we can make it crazier, but for now we're gonna have a cube come in this way, hit the sun, and then disable itself. So let's start with a cube like always. Because I am lazy and this is not a true art project, I will not try to make this pretty and get a crazy angle. I'm just going to put it directly above and then put a simple movement thing in there. Use a negative Y movement. -2? It's kind of slow. Maybe 20. Let's see how that looks. Nothing's going to happen yet. I just wanted to kind of see. That was way too fast. I'm just going to move this. I know we did some timer stuff earlier, but there's also there's always hackier ways to do this, right? So I'm just going to move this like super high up, so that when I set this -5 movement speed, it's just going to we'll watch this in the scene too. Instead of having to set up a timer, just it's just going to take a while for it to get there. Oh, there it is. Okay, there it goes. Cool, great, cool, nice. Sweet. So we've got, where is my sun? We've got the sun, we've got a collider on it, we've got the cube, it also has a collider and it's moving towards the sun, and we've got this script that this is going to be really rough to talk about. I'm introducing so many new concepts today and I apologize. I think I should have been writing this stuff down, maybe I will afterwards. Okay, this one is the flattest script in the group, right? There's nothing here. There's just the event, nothing else. We've got this detected collision event, which honestly sounds sweet, we've got it, right? Kind of, we don't got it, but we're gonna pretend we think that we got it. I'm gonna take the simple collision. I already know how this event works, and it's the script is called simple collision. The event is called detected collision, and it's got a whole thing. We already know how to use. We're rocking it today. We know how to use this thing. Oh yeah, I'm gonna take my cube that I should have renamed by now. I'm actually gonna do that now, so that I'm still rocking it. We're gonna call this falling asteroid. So I've got simple collision on the falling asteroid, and what I wanted to do, what I wanted to do is I want to take the whole game object, this whole thing, and I just want to set active. It's unfortunate that this is a different one. For others, for some of these scripts, it's enabled, but for game objects, it's set active. Really should write some of this stuff down, and I just want to disable that. So the concept here is when this script detects a collision, it's going to disable this object and it's going to disappear. And I think if I hit play, oh, nothing happened. Wonder why that is. Well, I know why that is, but we should wonder why that is. I'm going to put this way closer because I want to figure this out. I'm whoa, why is... And this is unfortunately one of these arcane Unity things that you just kind of have to know, because collision events are used all the time across Unity, and different scripts have them. Sometimes you have sound triggers, sometimes you have visual particle triggers, sometimes there's gameplay detectors. Collisions only happen in very specific circumstances, and usually rigid bodies are involved. So if I go to, if I look at the falling asteroid and the sun object, which are the two things that collide, and I know this just because we had been experimenting with it for so long, neither of them have rigid bodies. So that means that there will be no like events triggered, because technically, because they're not physically enabled, they didn't collide. They just kind of like overlapped or whatever. Like it didn't generate a collision event. So one thing I can do is I can go into both of these objects and just add rigid bodies. I'm going to disable use gravity because we're in space. I'm going to do this, but for reasons we're about to find out, this is not the best way to approach this. So now, okay, maybe this is the best way to approach this. I kind of expected, yeah, there we go. Now it's starting to do the thing. Like now our sun is, even that tiniest bit of collision has made our sun start moving around in ways that we like really didn't expect. Like now my scene is busted, right? Because like the sun object was like nudged by our like very short-lived falling asteroid, and now everything is like totally out of whack, and it's like unpredictable too. Like depending on the frame rate of your computer, maybe if I can get it to freak out by just like shaking this window super hard, we'll get different results. Yeah, like this time it's moving a little bit faster. So like we really don't want to look. These two things even collided. Now it looks totally different. Me as a a designer with like artistic intent, and I want to control what's going on in my scene. This is unacceptable. I cannot have my main actor, the sun, be like flipping out on me randomly because I just wanted a star to hit it and do something. So what we can do, and this is again, I apologize. There's like hella content here. If we go to, let's do this on the sun because I don't really care about the sun colliding things. There's this checkbox under all colliders. There's a checkbox that's called is trigger, and if I click on this and I delete the rigid body because this is going to freak out if I do this. Now what this does is this generates a separate set of events called trigger events, but this generates collision events whenever a trigger collider touches a rigid body. So if we hit play here, hopefully, it does the same thing, but the sun isn't nudged at all because the sun object isn't a rigid body anymore, so it's not physics enabled at all. But also because it's set to be a trigger, it doesn't have any collision at all. Like everything will just pass right through it. And you can imagine this being useful for like, think about, well, they call them level triggers in game design, but if you think about like, oh, I want something to happen when something reaches like a certain point, but I don't want there to be an object there. That's what triggers are great for. Or I want something to like change color when it passes through here, or I just want to detect whether or not, like if you're in VR or something, I want to detect if someone's hand is somewhere, but I don't want to mess with any of the physics of like the hands or the objects in that space. Triggers are like for that. So that's a lot. So we've got this falling asteroid that's got a collision script on it. It reacts to collision events. We've set it up so that it actually generates collision events, and when this collision event happens, we disable the object so that it touches and it disappears. I'm going to move this back up so we go back to the original vision. Hopefully everyone's comfortable. Just like let me know if you're not. I know I'm going like this might be like the craziest session. Like the recordings that are going to be posted in like a few different places. So like feel free to go back to it. I'm going to annotate some notes because even as I'm talking, this is even more content than I realized. Even though I kind of knew it was going to be a lot going in. This is crazy. It is crazy. I know. I think if you like remember anything, and this is kind of why, if you remember anything, just think about the simple movement scripts, because like anytime you get anything in Unity, like you can make it look a trillion times better if you just like move the camera in some way. It's like, oh, camera's moving, people are like, wow, cinematography, like you did it. But this is kind of like, you can imagine like, I don't know, Rube Goldberg machines, right, where there's like, I don't know, like you have, I don't want to really set this up because it would be a little bit time consuming, but you have like a platform and then some like spheres like resting on a wall here, and then like when something touches the wall, or like when something touches a wall off to the side, this like disappears, and then all the balls can like fall down the thing. Or you can like, yeah, I don't know. This is you're limited only by your imagination now. I think before you were limited a lot by the fact that like we weren't programming, but now you're limited only by your imagination. And this also just like reflects kind of how I think like the game development process should be. Like you have like some small set of things that you know how to do, and you can think about like what you can do with that. Because if you think about game development as like, oh, I can do anything, and I just need to put enough time in as programming, you can spend like years just programming without like making. And you know that has its merits too, but being able to approach it from the pure design side is like something that I really enjoy. But it seems like we have just barely enough energy, or I just have barely enough energy to talk about the last script, and this one is going to be like, if you think the previous ones were nuts, this one is going to be nuts. All right, let's get into it. Let's get into it. So, all right, I want these things. I want a million. Next week is going to be way easier, for real. Like, we're gonna reiterate all of this stuff. Next week I'm just gonna talk about, like, how do you make stuff? We got all these tools, we learned so much, how are we gonna make stuff? So, you know, that one, we're just gonna be chilling next week and making things together and talking about everything together. Or like all of the components, like importing assets, importing models, using these crazy scripts, and maybe using some pre-built things. So, next week, much easier. Okay, so I want this asteroid. This is like the dumbest. This is like not interesting at all. But what I want is I want like 100 of these. I want like these asteroids to just keep on coming. I don't even know why. I just want it. I just want the asteroids to keep on coming. One thing I can do, kind of like sort of obviously, is I can just take the asteroid and I can like copy paste it. Oh, whoops, it's the wrong setup. My hand is in the wrong position. I can copy paste it. I can copy paste it, and then move this up. And if you ever do this, you can even kind of like go faster by, oh, I'm using the wrong keys. You can even go faster by like selecting all of these. Well, let's move this up. We can select all 3 of these and copy paste them. Now we got 3, and then I can do. But this is clearly like silly. This is just a very silly like way to approach this problem of like. Of, you know, making things or repeating this like thing. Like let's not even deal. And this has other limitations too that we will break out of in a second. So I'm going to delete all of them except for the first one. I want this thing to spawn like 1,000,000 times. So what I'm going to do, this is like where stuff gets nuts. I'm going to take this object and I'm going to drag it into my project folder. Okay, this, now what we see in here, this is turned blue, and this down here says falling asteroid. This is called a prefab. So if I'm just going to double click on this. This is something that is really nice. They just added this 2018, Unity 2018. You can, if we look at, like if I double click on this, like my whole scene disappears. I mean, the game view stays the same, but the scene disappears, and I'm just like looking at, I guess, this object in isolation. But if we look over on like the stuff that's on here, like all the stuff is still here. It's like there's still the simple collision with the crazy, like, oh, I'm going to disable this. Oh, it's still got the rigid body. It still has a simple moving script with the same values. It even still has the same, like, default positions, stuff like that. And if I click on this left arrow on the left, I can go back to the scene. So again, like, if I double click on this in the project folder, I like took it here. I mean, I'm just going to do it again, because why not? Yeah, sure, delete the prefab, I don't care. I'm going to take this object. Just pretend I'm not doing this because, okay, I'm going to take this object that we made before, the falling asteroid object, I'm going to drag it into the assets folder, or into the project window, into the assets folder, and it makes this like thing here. Like it's next to all the other assets. We see our scripts, we see our model, but we also see this thing that's now falling asteroid, and it eerily resembles exactly this thing we had set up here. It's like, whoa. Falling asteroid here, it's got these numbers, it's got the simple collision script, it does this thing, it's, you know, moves down, and if I double click on this, it's like, whoa, it's the same thing. So what prefabs are is they are like essentially like templates or like copies. When I drag something from the scene into the project view, it creates a template so that now whenever, like, check this out, I want another one. I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna drag this on here, and now I have two. I have two that have the exact same functionality. There's like this falling asteroid and this falling asteroid, and they both like have the same properties as before. You know, actually, probably the smarter thing to do with all of this, I'm gonna make a copy of. I'm gonna make the sun into a prefab. So now I've got this sun prefab, and look, even all of its children have kind of changed colors a little bit. I'm gonna take the sun. I'm gonna drag it back into the scene. It shows up exactly where it was, but if I drag it up a little bit, you can see now we've got two. If I hit play, all of the functionality is intact, even for the asteroids. It's like, oh, they disappear when they destroy, they're moving down. Because I made them prefabs, now that every time I add these things to the scene, they maintain all of the scripts, all of the positions, all of the children, everything is the same as the originals. There's like no difference. And that's by design. There is not supposed to be a difference. And we can talk about more prefab stuff, like, if anyone is interested, but I know I've overloaded you with information this week. I kind of actually like that there's multiple suns in here. Maybe I'll even like spin them around. Like, check this out too. Even though these are all sun prefabs, like they're technically related to the same thing. If I spin one of these around, it doesn't spin all of them. So like, and you can notice even that I can like move these around. So like prefabs let you change the individual ones, but it's just that when you start, like when you put one into the scene, it copies it has saved the original settings from when you put it in the project view. So now I've set this up so that like all the crazy solar systems that I've made like move independently of each other. And this is kind of crazy. They're even bumping into each other, but this time I'm just going to kind of leave it because my artistic intent has degraded or changed or something. I'm now enamored with this idea of having a lot of objects on the screen, so I don't care if they bump around. So yeah, I mean, maybe like try it. Try taking your like sun object. If you did the same thing, try it. Like take your thing that has like a bunch of movement stuff on it, drag it into your project view, and then like make a bunch of copies and move around. You should notice like the same thing, that like all of the movement scripts that you've set up and a lot of the, I mean, this is kind of where the complexity can go like nuts, where like if you set up really complex, if you set up some like really complex behavior inside the objects that you're making prefabs and then you duplicate them, there's a lot to think about in terms of like something has gone wrong, like what is it? So like, you know, it's kind of, these are the parts of the game engine stuff where you have so much power that you got to be careful about like organization and managing complexity of your project. But I guess I'll spend a little bit of time just reorganizing this to give you some time to play around with the prefab functionality. I'll even actually rotate some of these so that they're like vertical. Yeah, I like that. Like this, maybe this way. Yeah, there we go. Now this is gonna look crazy. We're like almost at music video level. Not really. Oh, nice. Now they're not colliding with each other. Look how pretty this is. Alright, I thought I would be pretty unhappy with this. Alright, see ya. Go fill out the, everyone fill out the eval form. It's linked in the chat before you leave. Here, I'll even link it myself. Okay, alright. So, prefabs. We got prefabs. Oh, I forgot that I wrote this to only go until 5:30 on the schedule. This is actually scheduled until 6. That's my fault. But you know, this is a good place as any to stop. Like if you have to leave, like go ahead. Like this last script is still kind of nuts. I'll just show you what it is real fast in the last 30 seconds that I have. I'm going to take an empty. I'm going to move it so that it is like generally where this asteroid is. I'm going to delete both of these asteroids. Delete. Go to this object. This last one is called simple spawner. And it lets me spawn any prefabs. So like if I do this, I'm going to put a timer on it, and this is where stuff gets like nuts because I did this in a crazy way. blah blah blah, simple spawner, spawn, spawn, repeat forever. Okay. I'm going to talk about this over the course of the next half hour, but I'll just show you what the functionality is. So now this spawner thing is like constantly spawning these like asteroids. You can see like every 1 second it's like, oh, a new one, oh, another one, another one, another one. So don't worry, people who are staying, like I'm gonna do this like much slower and actually explain what's going on. But for everyone who has to leave, like my bad for scheduling this wrong. But thanks for coming. Fill out the eval form, please. Okay. Okay. Whew. This is also another extremely common pattern in game development or just like projects, 3D projects in general. Spawning stuff. Like normally, especially in games, normally worlds begin like in an empty, you know, there's like nothing there, and then stuff like spawns over time. Like you'll have some like monsters or something, or maybe you have like people walking around your world. They don't always start there. Sometimes they like come out of their house, and this is what like spawning means. I actually had someone who like didn't speak, who's like English wasn't their first language. They asked me what spawn means. It just means to create from nothing, or to like to start existing is to be spawned. And that's what that's where the word comes from. It's just a very like useful term because it's not really like you're not creating. I'm not like creating it. It's just like appearing and something is making that happen. So let's go over like how the simple spawner works. I've deleted all of the asteroids that were already here, and I made an empty game object where the asteroid was. Probably you should do this in the other order, where you make the game object and you delete the asteroids. That's what I did earlier, but the asteroids are already deleted, and I'm scared of Control-Zing back that far, so I'm not going to. But this game object is where the asteroids were, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and I'm going to add the spawner script to this game object, and if we look at the parameters, there's like spawn on start, spawn next frame, and object to spawn. This is probably the hardest. This is like the hardest one to grok is the word. This is the weirdest one for sure. But the important one to look at is object to spawn. Just like kind of forget about these parameters because they have weird uses that I will talk about if we have time. Parameter we're looking at is object to spawn, and you can see that it takes a game object. And game objects can be anything. Like they can be stuff in here in your hierarchy, but like I kind of don't recommend doing that because it can get really weird. Most importantly, they can be prefabs. So like one thing I can do is I could even drag in the sun here, and if I check the spawn on start, it'll like make one when the script starts and then not do anything else. This is a good way to just like kind of debug like what's going to happen when it spawns. And if I just spawn a sun, it'll stay in place. It doesn't have any movement attached to it. So like I probably don't want to spawn multiple suns because they'll just like open up on top of each other and weird stuff will happen. So let's not do that. Let's try using the falling asteroid parameter or prefab that we used earlier. I'm going to check the spawn on start again. Okay, cool. And this looks a lot more like behavior that we can like repeat safely. Like the asteroid spawns and it moves out of the way immediately. And kind of importantly, it deletes itself when it touches the sun down here. That way we don't get like a million of these if we just leave the project open. Yeah, that's like a consider. I mean, if I'm just like filming a GIF, like I probably wouldn't care if there's a million of them. But if I'm trying to like leave this open as like a desktop thing, like I don't want to just crash my computer from having a million cubes because I left it on for an hour. But you know, that's neither here nor there. So one thing this simple spawner script gives you is a function that you can call from simple timer. And this is where the repeat thing comes into play, where if I check this repeat forever checkbox, I go in and I add a trigger to this event, and I drag on my game. I should be renaming these things more aggressively. This is my asteroid spawner. I drag my asteroid spawner into the trigger that I've made in this event, and I go in, I look at the simple spawner, and you know, this is kind of like everything that's on the object, but one of these this time is called spawn. and this is kind of where like you need to like have a dialogue either with yourself as a programmer or with your programmer where you're like, well, they'll either tell you, oh, I made it so that you can trigger this via your events, or you go like, man, I really wish I could trigger this via events, and you set that up. But in this case, I can trigger a spawn function with an event, and I've set this up so that it'll repeat forever, and it happens every 1 second. I can even make this happen faster. Like, why not? Let's go 0.2. This is going to be pretty wild to look at, but so every 0.2 seconds, it'll trigger this event, and it goes asteroid spawner, spawn, and I've already set up the object to spawn to be the falling asteroid that we made earlier. So let's go in and see what that looks like. Oh, they collide with each other. That's really funny. Let's take a look at it in the scene. The collision events that we set up earlier, you know how they delete each other? These objects will like delete themselves if they collide in anything. The spawner is happening so fast that they just collide with each other and disappear, so they only show up sometimes. I mean, this is kind of cool to look at, honestly. But, okay, let's make that not happen. If we just make this time like a little bit more, 0.4, then now they should come in like pretty consistently. Yeah, here we go. Oh, cool, they even get deleted by like other stuff swinging around. I don't know if you guys caught that. Boom! Yeah, that little asteroid thing just swiped it. Boom! There it happened again. What? So cool. Okay, so yeah, that's a lot. This is a spawner. It'll let you like spawn a lot of stuff. Here's like another. I'm just gonna move over to the side and do this. Like if I like make a cube, and I'm gonna make it like really wide, and rotate this a little bit. It's already got a collider on it. This is where stuff gets cool. Like I'm gonna take a sphere. We're just gonna look at this in the editor just because, or in the scene view. Nothing happens. But if I enable physics on this sphere, set it up with a bridge body, turn on gravity, this should like roll down. Cool. Now I got a ball rolling down. But we can start having some real fun. Take the sphere, we make a prefab out of it. We make another empty, and we set up another spawner system. Let's go. Simple spawner. And simple timer. And we'll spawn a sphere. And we'll make this happen like 0.1 times. That's fine. Or 1 second. That's fine. Take this, put it in here, and run simple spawner. Spawn. Okay. So we've got the timer. It's running this script spawn function every 1 second. And now, I kind of want something at the bottom of the ramp, because look at that. There's like, oh, and I didn't repeat it. I want it to happen always. This is good. So let's take this and let's make it bigger. Bigify that way, bigify that way. That's kind of huge and ugly, but we'll live with it for now. That looks good enough to me. Oh, please, I'm so excited. Do it, do the thing. I hope I wonder if they'll just stack up on each other perfectly. So strange. What? Okay, what? What? How do I make that not happen? Maybe I'll like spin this around a little bit, like this way, I guess. Yeah, there we go. Oh yeah. It's like pachinko. I don't know how to even maybe I can combine this with the other scene somehow. I'm trying to think. I've got like 20 minutes, so it's like I've actually now covered everything that I wanted to cover. Like maybe actually I could even go like a little crazier and like not make this a sphere. Let's talk about prefab editing, I guess. So if I double click on this prefab, I got this like sphere here, and again I know this is like so much harder than the last couple sessions, and I apologize. And I can go in and I can add stuff to this prefab. So I've double clicked on the sphere, and I've dragged the piggy onto the hierarchy, and now there's the piggy inside the sphere object, This is gonna look so silly, but if I hit play now, I didn't add any colliders to the pig or anything, so now there's just like these like somersaulting pigs that are now gonna, I guess, stack up on each other perfectly at the bottom until okay, alright. Is this art? I don't know. Maybe if let's disable the renderer so we can, wow, beautiful. What is going on there? What is going on there? Yeah. It's like I don't know, gymnastics. Oh, now they're just like, whoa! What? Okay, this I did not expect. They're still perfectly stacked, but now they're even going up like multiple levels. Like I expected it to spill off the back, but like now they're just like going nuts. Is this a social commentary? They're wearing orange. Are all these pigs going to prison? I don't know. Let's go. And we can even see it actually in the background. Let's I don't know, disable this one too. This is something that we talked about briefly in previous sessions, but if you disable the mesh renderer, you can disable other mesh renderers. So now while this camera is spinning around, I can like see the wall of pigs growing bigger in the background. All right, okay, I'm gonna let them loose a little bit. I'm gonna tilt this. I'm just gonna tilt the cube just a little bit and see what happens. I think it's this one. Go. Is it? Oh no! Wait. Bye bye. All right. Well, so it goes. Oh, that's the tilt that I was looking for. Now they're all like freaking out and stuff. Yeah. All right, cool. Okay, now it's it for me. I think this is kind of why I like scheduled it to end a little bit earlier, because like there's a lot to process here. I think I was like thinking about like having breaks or something in the middle, or like not going, but I mean, so it goes. This is like spawner is super fun to play with. Like I can even, while I'm playing with this, let's go over to what is it? This one? This is my pig spawner. Oh boy, this is not going to be good, but I'm going to do it anyway. 0.1. Oh yeah. Luckily my computer, and I'm gonna have to stop this like before it goes too nuts, but my computer's pretty good, so we can just watch this for a little while. Okay, I am going to do something very stupid. No, it was too stupid. No, it was too stupid. I crashed Unity. I accidentally set it to 0, so now it's just like spawning infinite pigs until the whole process crashed. I should probably kill that before it like takes up all my memory and destroys everything. But yeah, so like that's week 3. If there's anything you want me to like go back over, I'll go back over it. Like let me know. I'm happy to do that. If there's anything that Unity editor, please go away. Please, quick before my computer crashes. Yes. Hopefully you guys could still hear me that whole time. I can show you the other. Did I not save this? Dang. Oh, I did. Okay. I can show you the other scene that I made for the GIF while we're chilling here. Because I think a common thing that you'd want to do in Unity is like, oh, I've got like a bunch of 3D assets, like something scanned or someone made a model or something, and I want to go like. I want to go like make a thing with it. Like one of the things you can do is you can go into Blender and like literally lay out the scene and like animate and organize things. But like honestly, a lot of times you just want like a camera to spin around, or you want like something to pop up after a couple seconds. And I think that's like kind of what I wanted to get through in this session. And I showed you like a lot of different ways to do a lot of different things, and you can kind of like pick and choose. I think this has shown me more than anything that I just need to make a document that talks about this stuff and give it to you guys. So look out for that. But in this scene, there's, the game object. Like before, I had a game object over here that if I spin this around, it moves the camera. I actually set this up to stop on a collider, which is funny. Like if I look at this sphere object, I'm just going to turn on the renderer so you can see. The camera will stop when it collides. This was like so that I could think about this more spatially instead of having to think about timers. One technique. Like when this collider hits this thing, it's set up to where is it? It's probably in the sphere here. It's set up to stop the rotation. That way, like, because I was messing with different angles, I was like, oh, I wanted it to be like behind the pig, but not like, and like slightly off to the side, but not like super off to the side. So I was just playing with the position of this sphere rather than playing with timings, which I thought was like, you can do it however you want. Otherwise, like, I just changed the background color and like put the ground on here, and this cube, I did the thing earlier where I just moved it really, really far away and it's moving relatively slowly so that the timing just like kind of worked out to match all the. Oh, I moved the camera accidentally. Now I'm just going to Control Z until it. There we go. So, yeah, I don't know. Any questions? Anything else we want to talk about? Anything else you want me to go over again? Anything else we want to look at? Do you think I cheated and this is actually still programming, or? I guess I can just go in and, like, honestly, like, I wish I had saved the scene that I was just working with, because I didn't. Save early and often, I suppose. That's all I can say to that. I wonder what happens if I try to open it. What will actually even be there? I think my prefabs might be there. I think up here, this one. But beyond that, I think that's about it. Like, I think, like, none of my scene, because I didn't hit Control-Z once. I got a little too arrogant about my ability to not crash Unity, and I lost all my scene things. Gonna look at, like, my session count. Well, there's not too many people left. Everyone. Okay, let's open up the doc. Let's see things we covered. We got. I'm gonna look at like the list of scripts. Probably like the assets in here. Show in Explorer. Unity Week 3 assets. All right. What do we look at? Simple collision. Simple collision. Simple movement. Simple spawner. And like again, like these things. I mean, for anyone who's still like hanging out here, I guess I can like wax about this for a little while. Like these things kind of reflect like the general workflow of Unity. Like as things get more complicated, it's just kind of like, or as you start pulling in more and more assets, it's kind of like, okay, I've got these scripts and I kind of want to configure them and reuse them in different ways. So like a lot of the thinking that you can do as a designer approaching Unity is like taking the scripts that you have and like using them in different ways to like approach your goals, and like not necessarily like coming up with a thing and going like, okay, like I only have these 4 tools, how do I do it? But kind of like thinking more like, okay, I have this concept of like, I don't know, a pig getting hit by a ball, like what can I do to like make this interesting with the tools that I have? Because like I was saying before, you can go down like endless rabbit holes about like, oh, I could like choreograph all the movement and set up the timings, but like there's only so much time on the earth, and you probably have like another idea that you want to execute afterwards, right? So like do what you can with the tools you have, and then like slowly add them one at a time. I think these scripts might get a little bit easier in the future. Maybe by the next time I'll have like refined a version. I'll have more refined versions of them, and you can just like reiterate some of these things because it's like there's so much like prefabs. Prefabs are nuts. But like if we look at, okay, I'm just gonna try this. If we look at the Kenny assets that I downloaded, for example, there's a Unity package in here, and I'm pretty sure that when I get this Unity package and drag it in, blah blah blah, there's all this stuff. Oh, it didn't actually. Well, I guess I was proven wrong. I thought there was going to be prefabs in here, but there weren't this time. Maybe I'll download something off the asset store to show that. Assets, watercraft. Yeah, we just have objects. But even like these things kind of import as prefabs. Like if we look at them, they're blue. So if I go in here and like edit them, oh my goodness, if I go in here and edit them, it'll change all of them. But if I were to like download stuff off the asset store, a lot of times they're prefabs, and even like if you get stuff from other people, like if for some reason you're collaborating with people, this is like the easiest way to move files across projects is to like export the prefabs. It's like, oh, I have this like crazy game object thing, I'm gonna make a prefab out of it and export it, things like that. But yeah, I mean, yeah. I guess I'm just gonna be like hanging out here for like 10 minutes because I got nothing more to talk about really. Doesn't seem like there's any more questions either. I actually have a feeling that a lot of people in the call right now are just like AFK. So I'm gonna cut the recording actually. Stop.